Today's forum will examine the link between climate and wildfires. We need to know what government should be doing to prevent this threat from getting worse, to protect communities, and to safeguard our wildland firefighters. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our highly distinguished participants.
I want to particularly thank Chairman Waxman. This is the first roundtable that the Bicameral Task Force has done, and we intend to do others as well, but this is, I think, a great beginning.
The climate change has been the dominant driver of fire regimes and fire risks through much of Earth's history. Fire regimes represent the cumulative characteristics of fire events over time, just as climate represents the cumulative characteristics of weather over time. For the past 10,000 years, humans have become increasingly important shapers of fire regimes. We use fire to manage our environment, change natural resource fuel conditions through agricultural expansion, and emitted increasing amounts of greenhouse gases with resultant global warming. As long as greenhouse gases emissions continue to accelerate, and there is nothing to indicate the contrary, fire regimes will continue to shift to more frequent, larger, higher risk fires in the future.
One of the impacts that we are wrestling with in the Forest Service and all the agencies are wrestling with is the mounting cost of fighting fire. In 2008, the cost of fighting fire went up to $3 billion. In the 70s, it was, even in inflation-adjusted terms, less than half a billion a year.
$3 billion was when?
$3 billion.
What year?
In the 70s, it was about $500 million on the average.
$3 billion now.
$3 billion now.
This year.
Yeah, 2012, I'm sorry, 2012. Okay, that represents a direct cost, of course, to the taxpayer, but it also represents foregone work that we could be doing in the forest to adapt the forest better to the burning conditions that are increasingly getting worse.
We are seeing a dramatic increase in the number of fires, especially in California. California, in CAL FIRE, their 5-year average from January 1 to July 20 was almost 2,600 fires. Last year, that number was 2,700 fires. This year, to the same date, it's almost 4,000 fires. There's a variety of reasons for this. Land use factors, human-caused fires, hazardous fuel loads, insects, disease, and climate change. The effects these wildfires have are they threaten our lives, they threaten homes, businesses, and natural resources. Just a study of the San Diego County fires in 2003, the suppression costs were a little less than $50 million, but the total economic impact to that community was over $2.4 billion.
But I wanted to focus more specifically today on fire and the effects of changing climate. The costs of fire have increased dramatically. For the U.S. Forest Service, in 1991, suppression costs were 13% of the U.S. Forest Service budget. Last year, they were well over 40%.
It's a consensus that the size and the season and in some cases the severity of the fires are exacerbated by climate change.
As stated, the fire seasons are getting longer. Just in my area alone, we were funded, and that's the way in most places our fire season is not necessarily a amount when the fires start actively occurring. It's a date on a calendar when your budget kicks in. And that used to be mid-May, where I'm from in San Luis Obispo County. It's now started off being in mid-April. And we're seeing this shift further and further forward, and seeing it shift further and further towards November and towards Christmas. In many places in Southern California, and Congressman Waxman is aware of this, it never stops. It's year-round.
It strikes me that the firefighters who deploy into this environment are operating at really maximum levels of human fitness and endurance. In some cases, meeting or even probably exceeding the fitness of Olympic athletes in order to be able to sustain that level of effort in that environment. Could you, I guess, Mr. Swan and Chief Litzenberg particularly, could you explain for us just a little bit what the operating environment is like for a human being trying to fight a wildfire in terms of the level of effort, the temperature that you're trying to operate in, and are we seeing that level of physical demand changing as a result of the changes we've talked about in the fire environment?
But we're seeing more injuries occurring on the heat stress of firefighters cooking on the inside than having these tragedies like there are now. So you place yourself in these, and we're not like in the structural firefighters where you have the heavy suits and things, but you're still wearing protective clothing, a 40-pound pack, give or take. You're out in the wildland. If you're not on a fire engine, you're out in, you've got to bring everything with you.
I don't know that necessarily, while the conditions are clearly hotter and drier, the seasons are getting longer, and I think our resources are being spread more thin than they were in the past. I think the major change as far as the impacts on firefighters has come with our understanding of just what you said, which is that these people are performing really at a professional athlete level. And we've come to a greater understanding of what kind of impact that has on these people. And with that understanding comes the responsibility to do something about it. And so we've had to train people better, we've had to equip them better, and we've simply had to get more people out on the line to respond to these increased stressors. So is the question, has there been an impact? Yeah, there has.
And when you say these increased stressors, to use your phrase, what specifically are you referring to?
When we're talking about longer seasons, resources that are spread thin, fires that are lasting longer, hotter environments, drier environments, simply extending a season longer puts more impact on people.
Well, I think all of our witnesses, and from what I hear you saying, climate change is getting worse. The dangers in terms of forest fires are growing. That the costs of minimizing the risk beforehand or fighting the fires and picking up the pieces afterwards are all going up. So we've got to pay attention. And I just want to note that as we sit here at this moment, there are 28 active wildfires burning in 9 states. These fires have ravaged almost 300,000 acres of land. Not far from my own district in Southern California, the mountain fire recently forced more than 6,000 people to evacuate their homes. These fires are not only disruptive in destruction, but they can be deadly, particularly for those of you who protect us from wildfires. 192 firefighters died fighting wildfires between 2002 and 2012. This year, 24 more have died, including the 19 firefighters battling the Yarnell Hill fire. And since 2006, the United States has experienced 6 fire seasons with an estimated cost of more than $1 billion. This is absurd for the Congress or the American people to think, well, we've always had firefighters, and so we're getting a few more. We just can't ignore a problem that's getting worse. It's going to continue to get worse. And of course, this isn't the only problem that we're facing because of climate change.
I'm a New Englander. In New England, the effects of climate change tend to be wet. We have more extreme rains. We break through our 100-year and in some case our 500-year flood lines. We have ocean storms lash the sea against our shores. We face flooding and destruction of beaches and things like that. Move west and the picture changes. And it has been an eye-opener for me to study more about what's happening as a result of the increased heat, the increased drought, the increased fuel, and to hear from all of you who are so expert in this, I think has been enormously helpful to us here in Congress. And for those of you who work with and represent the firefighters who go into this extraordinary environment, I mean, I think I'm doing pretty well. If I'm taking a hike, add, say, 30 degrees of incline not going through paths, but just wherever you have to go to beat through the underbrush, wearing inhospitable clothing and a 40-pound pack, having smoke and heat be the atmosphere around you, it becomes just an arduous, almost extraordinary physical task to take on. And the fact that our wildfire firefighters go out and do this so expertly and so effectively over and over again is really important testimony. And the fact that as they face this extended season, worse fires, hotter environments, more dangerous efforts at that interface, we are not there for them. We're not expanding our support for them. We're not helping them. We're telling them, no, now you have to be sequestered, and frankly, we're telling them we don't care. I think this has been a really, really valuable thing for me, and I just want to express my real gratitude to the witnesses for what they've done to help me understand this and to help, I think, all of Congress understand the problems that we face. I'm very grateful.